want to welcome everybody for coming. This is the best turnout we've had. It's amazing what happens when the weather turns bad. Before we get started, there's chairs up here, folks. If you want to come on up. Before we get started, I'd like to, yeah, thank you. If you would turn your cell phones off or put them on mute. If you don't know how to put it on mute, here's a young man here that probably knows more about it than any of us. Please hold your questions to the end of the presentation. I'll say up front that there's probably a lot more questions than we have answers. This is a process, and until we get into the process, we won't know the answers till we know what questions to ask. Let's be courteous. One person speak at a time, please, and I will act as moderator here, so when we open it up for questions, as I said, we won't be able to answer everybody's questions, but at least everybody will be able to ask their questions. The KVRA is associated with this, and that's a very controversial subject, and there's people here who are opposed to KVRA. And this is not to be a forum for debating KVRA. This is about the Affordable Power Program. I guess I covered don't dominate the conversation and keep the discussion focused on the power program. Go ahead. The agenda, we'll start out with introductions, explain who KVPA and COAPA are, and talk about the Affordable Power Program, how you can participate, and what the schedule is. So, introductions. I'm Holly Cannon, Executive Director of the Klamath Water and Power Agency. This is Carl Strantz. He's the Chairman of Klamath Basin Power Alliance. This is Stuart Robertson. He's the consultant we have hired to work with KVPA, Reclamation, Pacific Core, and Bonneville Power Administration, and Western Area Power Authority. So he's got a lot of people to keep lined up. We have Matt Walter, is on the board of directors of KVPA and Upper Klamath Water Users Association. And Becky Hyde is on the board of Upper Klamath Water Users. And I see Toby Freeman, the area manager. Is that your title?
Regional Community Manager for Pacific Power.
Okay. I knew the Pacific Power part. And Toby probably doesn't have any more answers to questions than I do today, so, but you'll probably get some of them.
I'm glad to feel it.
KVPA is a non-profit management entity, is how it was identified in the KVRA. KVPA was formed by Klamath Water and Power Agency and the Upper Klamath Water Users Association. The purpose of KVPA is to implement the Affordable Power Program as identified in the KVRA. KVPA has 6 board members. As I said, Carl is chairman, president. Dave Chatska is vice president. Rocky Liskey, secretary-treasurer. John Crawford, Gary Wright, and Matt Walters are the directors. The board is made up of 2 directors from California, 2 from on-project in Oregon, and 2 from off-project in Oregon. Business of KVPA cannot be dominated by any one of those groups. For any motion to pass in a board meeting, it requires at least one member of each of those groups voting for it plus a majority. KBPA does not have a source of income, so it is being administered by COAPA for KBPA. The history of the agricultural power rates, most of you who are pumpers know more about this than I do. The Klamath project was never authorized for power. The USBR contracted with COPCO, predecessor to Pacific Corps, beginning in 1917 and again in 1956 for affordable power. In 2006, the 50-year contract expired, and there was some attempts to extend that low-cost power. The Federal Energy Regulatory, well, hold on, I'm getting myself mixed up here. On another slide it says that the PUC sided with Pacific Corps, and so the result of that is that there's a ramp up from the low-cost power to tariff rate. California power user, is there anybody here that's a California power user? Okay. The Pacific Corps rates, the ramp up hits tariff in April of 2013, right, Toby?
For Oregon.
For Oregon.
Yes. California
is currently at tariff. So, that's what it says here. Pacific Corps did not renew, I went through that, did not renew the preferred rate agreement. FERC supported Pacific Corps. Anyway, here's a chart, you probably can't see it, showing in 2006 the rate was 0.8 cents per kilowatt hour. In 2013, the chart on the internet shows that it will be 9.5 cents per kilowatt. Today, go back a minute, Julie. Today, you should be, on project, should be at 4.5. So in 2 years, it's going to double. The goals of the Affordable Power Program are price stability. They up front will tell you that the Federal Power Program is not going to be a lot different initially from Pacific Corps rates. But the Federal Power Program is the first step in the Affordable Power Program. Basically, we're trying to establish a cost-based power rate, which means that where Pacific Corps is owned by investors, and those investors deserve a return on their investment. A cost-based power rate will be, you power users are the owners, and there is not a profit percentage there, so whatever savings there is by no profit goes back to the power user. This is similar, the concept is similar to like Surprise Valley Electric, where they are user-owned, not investor-owned. The elements of the Affordable Power Program, I need to state first off at this point that it's through the Bureau of Reclamation. The Bureau of Reclamation has the authority to receive federal power It is through reclamation that we will be contracting for BPA power to be wheeled down here and contracting with Pacific Core to deliver it through their distribution system to the pump. So the KVRA, if the KVRA is not implemented, the off project cannot receive the federal power. It is under the authority that the KVRA legislation will authorize reclamation to bring federal power to off project. The federal power for on project can go forward without KVRA legislation. The KVRA provides for interim power benefits, which would be in the period between authorization of KVRA and the completion of the power program, and I think there's only a 3-year period there that there's funds to buy down the power rate. The next step is federal cost-based power. Then there's money in the KVRA for KVPA to develop renewable generation. The concept there is to develop a profit-making enterprise where the profit would be used to buy down your power rate. The ultimate goal is to have a power rate that is similar to neighboring regional USBR projects. The process is for Stewart to develop interconnection agreements between reclamation, Pacific Core, and BPA, and for the California folks, Western Area Power. So yeah, I went through that. And local administration of KVPA and of the power program will be local, so there will be a local control and operation office here. So in the packet of information that you picked up, if you picked up information from the table, are 2 forms. The top one has a table on it. The information, so well, the second form is an authorization for you authorizing Pacific Core to release your power load information to us so that Stewart can analyze that and demonstrate to BPA what the size and shape of the power loads here are. The front page has this table on it, and Stewart's going to use it to do some magic. The information that Pacific Core will release to us is 1-month blocks of power. So however much power you used in a month, it's that total number of kilowatt hours. Stewart's going to take what you fill out here and try to figure out what the shape of your power usage is. Ideally, BPA wants that in 1-hour increments. So Stewart needs to predict from what you put on this little table when you're on, when you're off, and how much power you're using. So the important things on this table are type of use, whether it's a well, pumping from a canal, a river diversion, or a booster pump, or a drainage pump. Then the irrigation cycle column, which is the 4th column over. When you start irrigating, for example, if you're using a pivot, do you turn it on and leave it on until you've completed an irrigation? So Is it 24 hours a day? Do you take 4 days to make a circle? So that would be irrigation cycle. If it's 24 hours a day, then 24 hours. How many days till you shut it off again? If you are, what Stuart's looking for is a pattern. You irrigate during the daytime hours. Well, is that 8 hours a day or 12 hours a day? And how many days do you go through that pattern before you shut it off to wait for the next rotation? The typical pattern of cycle, so is it, do you go through your irrigation cycle once a week, once every 2 weeks? What's your cycle? And then horsepower and acreage. Now, something that I kind of skipped over and I want to go back and hit is, why is the federal power going to be stable power? The presumption here is that Pacific Core has a significant percentage of its power generated by coal-fired power plants, and that as EPA begins to regulate CO2 emissions, that Pacific Core's costs are going to go up. BPA's power comes from hydro generation that's largely paid for. So I do a chart like this. It's just a cartoon representation of the concept, where this is dollars and this is time. We're anticipating that over time, Pacific Core's power rate's going to do this, while BPA will be increasing, but at a less percentage. Because we will be contracting with Pacific Core to deliver the power from the local substation to the pump. We still have the delivery cost, but we'll have the more stable cost of energy of BPA, so the cost of KBPA power should be somewhere in the middle. So initially, where for some time initially it will be not a lot different from Pacific Core. Over time we anticipate that being a better cost, and then over time also, as the renewable energy generation program kicks in, then we anticipate this line being somewhere down here. Let's see where I'm at here. Okay, what you're signing up for, I talked about load logistics, where, when, how much, that's going to be Stuart's magic. BPA applies to all Oregon on and off project loads, but not in California. The BPA power will be Tier 1, which is preference power. So we identify a block of power that we contract for over time. If there's load growth and we use up our Tier 1 power, then we will only be able to receive Tier 2 power, which is market-based. The rate for that is market-based, so it'll be slightly higher. Okay, and I'm going to skip the Western area power discussion. The benefits are not definable until we know what the load is and go through the negotiations. Let's see, Pacific Core pass-through distribution costs, pass-through of state fees and taxes. So the only thing that we don't have to pay of the current Pacific Core rates is the generation costs and maybe some ancillary costs. we'll find that out in the negotiations. Depending on, BPA costs will be dependent upon the time and the way it's used. BPA may bundle the transmission costs through their system and through Pacific Corp's transmission system to the local substation, but then it will be the Pacific Corp costs from the local substation to the pump will be the distribution costs. And the BPA costs are not tied to the coal generation exposure. And I'm going to skip the WAPA or the Western Area Power discussion. And I've already talked about the buy down of power costs with renewable energy. So eligibility will be the area covered by the Schedule 33 on your power bills. On one side, I've seen some power bills where one side it says Schedule 33 and on the other side it'll say Schedule 41, or no, Schedule 35 and 40. So it's all Schedule 33, rate code 35 or rate code 40. When we hit tariff in 2013, everybody will be Schedule 41. That's my understanding. In California, it's Schedule 20. Additional criteria is still under review, and I want to point out here that there will be additional criteria. We don't know what the complete benefit is, and we don't know what all the baggage is. But by filling out these forms, you're only indicating an interest. You are not signing up, you are not committed to the Affordable Power Program. At some later date, when Stuart finishes his work, we'll be getting a hold of you and saying, here's the benefits, here's the problems, here's the baggage. Do you want to participate at that time? So it's right now you're just signing up for an option to participate later. Please complete your interest application. We would like you to do that as soon as possible so that we can start feeding that information to Pacific Corp, and so that Stuart, because he has to do a calculation on every one of these applications, we want to get things moving through. We don't want a slug of stuff happening at the end. So the window closes November 30th. As I said, we don't want a slug of applications at the end because then we run out of time to meet our time schedule. Okay, I've already talked about the forms. The forms are here. Also, they're on the counter in here. So the table out there, the counter in here, you can find them online at coapa.org, or you can call and we'll mail forms to you. You know, I forgot to introduce staff. Sorry. Jan Million over here. She's the one you'll talk to first on the telephone. Julie Matthews here. And Greg Eddington from the Klamath Water Users Association is here. So, anyway, also here's the phone number and an email address. And here's a schedule of meetings, public meetings that we've had. We've already been through all of this stuff. We're here now, the last meeting. So the next step is you have the forms. You can go to the website. We've been writing down the questions that people ask. We're going to get answers to those questions and post them on the website so that, you know, you're going to hear a lot of tonight, I don't know the answer to that. When we get the answers, we'll put it on the website. So let's open it up to questions. Well, this is a quiet group. Yes, sir.
Go ahead. Oh, thank you. Question I have is on the form to fill out. It's wanting the days and so forth. And I'm trying to figure out exactly how to do that because I understand the importance of the information you're wanting. But that's a really tough question to answer because if you're running a pivot and you're running a 1/4 inch, it's going to run so many hours. You run an inch, it's going to run so many hours. And weather has a lot to do with it. So how do we pin that down so you've got what you want?
Well, I would answer it since I've been answering it all week. So Stuart doesn't know what I've been saying. I would say put down what is your average, what you would do as an average. You know, we realize that it depends upon what crop you're using, you're growing. It depends upon what time of the year it is. It depends upon what type of a year it is. And we didn't want to make this 900 questions. And we didn't want Stuart to have to do a complete farm analysis on every application. So, Stuart, please.
You covered it well. It's what is your best indication of how you use power. And that's as close as we can get. We're trying to get some things so we can get some parameters around it. Again, we're going to have to take a whole month's worth of information and try and put some shape to it somehow. And if we can get some clue as to how to do that, we operate during the day. Some places operate during the day to cool their crops. Some operate at night because they think they can save some energy or energy cost. Depending on how you generally operate, that's as good as you can get. We don't want to make it hard. It shouldn't take you, but you know, just your gut reaction is really what we're looking for in terms of how you operate.
I'd add to that, if you put, this thought just occurred to me, I wish it had occurred a couple of weeks ago. If you put down what your maximum irrigation practice is, then Stuart could probably go to your maximum usage month, and he would know then that for your maximum month, what's on this chart is what you do. Then he could back it off from there. I don't know, does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. Yes, sir.
If we have a district that has about 65 shareholders, if an individual shareholder uses the water that we deliver to him, but yet has to pump it out of the ditch for their wheel lines or center pivots, will they qualify for this on an individual basis?
Yes. The qualification is if you're inside what was the historic Schedule 33 in your irrigation or drainage pumping, and it has to be a dedicated meter. It can't be that it can't be a meter that also runs a house or a barn or something like that. It's got to be irrigation use only.
So the key is the Schedule 31 or 47, whatever it is there, that's the key, on their bill.
Yeah. David?
Mine's twofold. First of all, you mentioned that your target through the KBPA is to hopefully get to a rate that is similar to other projects, other Bureau of Rec projects. First of all, I'm kind of curious what that is with reference to what tariff's going to be or how much less it is. I know it's all a guessing game, but you obviously have an idea because you said you're trying to get there. And then my second question would be what you guys have or we have as irrigators to go to the table with to negotiate a better power rate?
Negotiate with who for a better power rate?
BPA, where we're going to be buying our power.
Well, we don't negotiate for a better rate. All we can negotiate for is for a block of power. They set the rate. We can't negotiate with Pacific Corp for a better rate of delivery. They have standards yeah, it's already, they've gone to the Oregon PUC and established what the cost is for their delivery of power. So what we negotiate is not the price of power, but how the power is going to move from point A to point B. Okay, as far as what the a rate similar to neighboring Bureau of Reclamation projects, that is a target. We haven't looked at, we don't know what we would be looking to Washington and Idaho for the reclamation project rates in those areas, because those are the areas that are more agronomically close to us. We would not look to California because they have a growing season that's twice our length and a crop selection that's probably 100 crops greater than ours. So it's a whole different economic picture for the reclamation projects in California. So does that answer your question?
What are those rates in Washington and Idaho that are similar to ours right now?
I don't know. I know they're reasonable.
If you're not negotiating the rate, but you're negotiating the delivery, I don't care if they bring it in a truck. I mean, what does it matter how it's delivered? I mean, I thought that's what this meeting was about, was to negotiate reasonable power rates.
Well, the Affordable Power Program has several components. What the federal power component is power rate stability, so that we get a foundation that we feel is more stable over a long period of time than Pacific Corp. Then the next step is the renewable program. So this isn't what's going to help you out tomorrow or next year or the year after. The affordable, or the federal power is going to be, over time, should be, there's no promises, should be better over a long period of time. So did that answer your question?
Not really. I mean, so basically, what we're talking about now is really futuristic. I mean, well, how many years down the road are you looking at? And this is all contingent upon capacity KBRA too? Or I guess not.
No, if you're on project, no, it's reclamation has the authority to bring federal power to on-project power users.
And that's BPA.
And that's BPA.
And that's not, they don't have to go through the PUC board to determine that.
No.
Just to be clear, if you're off project and the KBRA doesn't go through, this is not going to be on.
Doesn't help you. But on the chance that KBRA is going to go through, if you're interested, fill out the forms, and we will include you so that our negotiations include you, but we can't bring the power to you until the KBRA authorizes it.
We are acting as if KBRA is going to go forward because we've set up the KBPA board with off-project and project irrigators. And so we're doing the studies as if we're going forward with the KBRA is going to pass legislation and get funded, and off-project will be able to participate.
And in doing that, what we need to do is, with the Bonneville Power, is set what they call a high water mark. The amount of power that they will negotiate for us. Once we set that high water mark, it's there and it won't increase over time. So we need to have all the load that's reasonably conceivable, that will attach to this system or be interested in the system when we make our application. Once that application is done and we start moving forward, that tier 1 power, the lowest cost power, will be set. Once new loads come on, then they will probably, once we get above that high water mark in power, that power will be at a market price, and we'll have to blend all that in. So those that come in late will miss the opportunity to catch a base of federal power.
Gentleman up front here.
Are all the pumps here under Schedule 33, and what does that mean?
That's an identification of, Pacific Corps uses different rate schedules to identify different classes of power users. And so Schedule 33 was what was the old 1956 contract power.
It would be your pumps for agriculture or drainage. It would not be your shop. It wouldn't be a potato cellar. Not those things. It's agriculture pumping.
Question in the back?
If I understand it correctly, to bring this power in, you would be bringing it over Pacific Power lines.
Yes.
You would be paying Pacific Power for bringing them over those lines, is that correct?
Yes.
And Pacific Power can charge anything they want to for that?
No. You want to address that, Toby?
Yeah, we have a standard tariff for direct access customers.
Okay, and you speak of tariffs, and you say that your rate is a tariff.
Yeah,
And so that's how much you can charge on the top, correct?
tariffs are the schedules, the rates that are established by the Public Utility Commission.
Okay, but if you want to charge less than that, you can, is that correct?
The tariff is what we charge.
No, you didn't answer my question. You didn't answer my question. I said, if you want to charge less than the tariff, you can, is that correct?
I don't believe so. I mean, the tariff is what we charge.
I don't think Warren would let him do that.
I don't think he wants to answer the question himself.
I don't think I am answering the question.
Okay, and what is to keep you from raising the tariff? What I'm getting at is...
The Public Utility Commission, that's where these tariffs come from. We are a regulated utility, and everything we charge you is subject to these tariff schedules that come from the Public Utility Commission.
How long,
so that's how you raise
how long is the tariff good for?
Until it changes. Have you noticed your residential rate change in the past few years?
Mm-hmm.
It's changed because there have been rate cases, and the PUC have revised tariffs accordingly.
But you have to go to the PUC and ask them to do that, right?
Yes.
PUC doesn't do that automatically. You
Right.
ask them.
We go to the PUC on a regular basis to demonstrate to them what it's costing to deliver service to our customers.
Okay, I'd like to introduce Commissioner Cheryl Huckel. Thank you.
Well, I just,
Right behind there.
There he is.
Oh, Carl?
Al.
Al? Schweitzer. Sorry, Al.
Okay.
Yes.
just to clear up what I asked before. So what you're saying is we're kind of going to change our supplier, but we're going to use PPL's lines. And so, but EPA is not, they're not entitled, or not entitled, but they don't have to go through PUC to change their rates. And so that's, over the long term, is going to keep our rates affordable?
Well, no, BPA is not a utility, not a utility company. They do not supply the retail customer. The PUC regulations apply to the retail customer.
Right, I understand that.
BPA is a wholesale supplier.
So we're gonna get our power wholesale rather than PPL, but we're gonna use PPL's lines to
The
get it.
generation will be at BPA's generation cost. We will still be paying Pacific Core the cost of distribution. So,
Right, but our rates aren't gonna be raised if PPL goes to the PUC commission to raise it. They will.
okay, Pacific Core has several components to their power rate. They have the generation cost, and I'll keep it simple by saying generation cost and the delivery cost. We will still be subject to whatever their delivery cost is. We will not be subject to their generation cost. We'll be subject to BPA's generation cost. Yes, ma'am.
I'm sure that this is a pretty simplistic question, but going back to what the other gentleman was asking as far as knowing what the rates are of the other areas that you mentioned as kind of targeting goals, I don't quite understand the concept of not knowing their rates, but then saying that we're targeting, that's something we're targeting. Do you know, have any idea what kind of rate you're looking at?
I haven't looked at all the reclamation projects in Washington and Idaho. I've looked at a few. I've seen rates as low as 0.3 cents per kilowatt to around 3 cents per kilowatt. So the reason for setting, we will need to do a study to find out what is kind of the average, and we don't know what that number is going to be. The reason we need it there is the money in the KBRA for renewable generation is not a gift, it's a loan. So when the Affordable Power Program brings the power rate down to whatever that similar rate is to other Bureau projects, then any profit earned above that amount will go to repay the government for the money to develop the renewable generation. Then after many, many years, when that money is paid back to the government, then the full income from that renewable generation will be applied to your power rates. Becky?
Can you explain how the buying of spot market power for BPA might work?
Stuart?
We can, the Oregon supply is supposedly going to come from BPA, so you will not have much exposure to what we would call a spot market. There's two kinds of market power. One is what you just buy in the day-ahead market, and then Pacific Core would regulate the system, and you'll get hourly variances, and you'll get a little bit of hourly cost from that. Then there's a forward purchase that you might make to cover some power out days, months, even years ahead. You can also call that spot market because you buy it on the spot. It's just like you're farming futures. You know, you have to, you can sell a crop in the future or buy seed for the future. So these prices, there is a market out there. You can go to various places and see what the forward markets are for power. And those prices aren't going to be a whole lot different right now than what Pacific Core's generation costs are, because Pacific Core is in that market too, and they're buying power from that market. So it's not the end all of trying to get savings. You can buy forward, and when you buy forward, you usually pay a risk premium because somebody else is taking on that risk. On the day-ahead market, it ends up over the long run, just like a variable rate mortgage over long term will tend to be the lowest cost, but you got to be able to absorb that price when it goes way up. So there'll be some sort of a risk management policy with the KBPA here to determine how much long-term forward price, how much daily market you would do, but that's mainly going to be for the California market. The Oregon, if we get the amount of power that we expect from BPA, the Oregon side won't be subject much to the forward markets. What the forward markets will affect is what the revenue stream will be from any of the enterprises that you develop. That'll be a revenue source.
Another question? Yes.
What's the current BPA rate?
It's right about 3 cents.
Okay.
You have to add that to your distribution cost.
Right.
More questions? Yes.
What is the distribution cost?
Anybody want to take a stab at that? Toby or Stuart?
It depends a lot on how you use your power. Most of the expense comes from a demand charge, and if you use the demand for 1 hour in a month, you're going to have a huge cost per kilowatt hour. If you have a nice load that operates for a whole month, you turn on a 20 horsepower pump and create a 15 kilowatt load for 744 hours, your cost from PacifiCorp will be way down. If you use it for 15 minutes in the month or an hour in a month, you'll have a real high cost from PacifiCorp. So it varies so much from user to user depending on how it goes.
Which is why you're filling out those forms, right? That's
Pardon me?
why we're filling out the forms, right?
Right. So that's the idea. We're trying to get a handle on how you use your energy. We will see the total amount of energy that you use, and with the forms, we'll know what size that load is. So we'll know whether that load's used 25% of the time, 85% of the time, or 100% of the time. So everybody's price from PacifiCorp distribution service will be different depending on how they use their load. Long-term average could be on the order of, typically a range might be between 4 and 6 cents a kilowatt hour, again, depending on how you use your energy. In California, the cost is much lower because they use a lot more energy over the entire year. PacifiCorp has to take the cost of their distribution system, divide it by the amount of kilowatt months that are used, and recover their cost plus a margin for their profit. And because this is a short growing season here, and you have only a very small window of period where you use your energy, you've got to pay for wires that are sitting there unused a lot of the time. So you have a much higher cost for delivery here than you do in, say, California, where the energy is used all year long.
Just one quick question on the form. It says irrigation cycle, number of days, is that per month or per season?
No, that would be number of days of that cycle. So,
well, you see, when we're irrigating in the district, we're running full month straight through for 8 months, or whatever the month season is.
so
We're running 24 hours a day.
Right.
pumping to 60.
So you would put down however many days, you know, if it's a pump that runs continuously well, Stuart, maybe, what I'm thinking here is if you turn it on in June and turn it off September 15th, put that down.
Okay.
You know, what,
All right.
the
Answers my question.
okay. Yes, Kathy.
I would have a question about Tier 1 and Tier 2. Just, I want to clarify just so I understand. Tier 1 is the affordable power rate that you guys are working on, right? And that's from Bonneville Power Administration, and that's a federal program?
Federally generated power, yes.
Federally generated.
And we're not going to just have Tier 1. We're targeting to get as much Tier 1 as will cover all of your loads. To the extent we have Tier 1 established and we have that threshold, if load grows beyond that tier 1, we will get tier 2 energy to come with it. They will serve the entire load, but part of it will be at the tier 1 rates, and another part will be at the tier 2 rates. And then the authority here will have to figure out how to apply those 2 rates across all loads, how it will be segregated.
So tier 1 is based on when I fill out the form and everybody else who fills out the form, tier 1 is going to be based on that power load amount.
Yes.
And so you will be able to determine when we sign, we're giving you access to our power bills, the amount of electricity that you use for your account, right?
Yes.
And so you'll be able to deduce what our annual load is for the tier 1
That's correct.
amount. And then if whoever doesn't want to do this is subject to the tier 2 power, I mean, they're not in.
They wouldn't be in it at all if they don't want to be in it. What might happen is they might sign up late after the tier 1's been established, and if we don't, if we have fully subscribed and used all of our tier 1 power, you'd have to put them on somewhat of a different rate perhaps. It depends on the policy that the board ends up coming up with in terms of spreading rates, but you could have, in essence, a first class of a customer and a second class customer if you come in after this first round of signups goes. You could be a second class customer, but I'm speaking out of turn a little bit because I don't know if the board has decided that. They've got to decide how they're going to do the rates. Those policies haven't been set.
Kathy, and we're not setting, excuse me, the how much power you can use by looking at your historical data. If you change your pumping program, your cropping system, whatever, you can use more power. You may, but if we, as a whole, go beyond that block of tier 1 power, we'll be up into a tier 2. So we're not, don't get us wrong, we're not restricting people what they can use by looking at your historical data.
Well, so let me the last part. So, and the tier 2 is full tariff. There's no cost benefit to tier 2.
Tier 2 is a market-based energy rate, and it's not full tariff. Full tariff is specific for, if we're going to keep our terminology straight, but you'll be, the tier 2 energy would be priced at whatever the market is to get that energy, and BPA will basically tell us what their tier 2 cost is.
Greg?
Isn't the tier 1, tier 2 thing, doesn't that have to do with timing from Bonneville's perspective, or is it new customers have, you sign up once and that's tier 1? But I thought it had to do with the timing of, at some point their rates go up later down the road.
It's the tier 2 crops in to cover basically load growth. We will set a high water mark, and there's some power pooling and benefits that go on with the timing on how you use your power. That's a little complex for what we're here talking about now. But as if you set your tier 1, and let's just say it's 9.9 megawatts for the Oregon on and off project load, and we start off and we're at 9, and we get a little bit of load growth that comes up because people are coming on, we'll hit the 9.9, and then once we get above that threshold, then all the energy that COAPA uses will start getting, as you go over that increment of power will be priced at market. So we'll have, instead of a 3 cent to set a benchmark energy cost, instead of 3 cents, the melded cost might be 3.1 cents. Depends on, if you double your energy use and the market's at, say, 5 cents, well, then you're going to have a 4 cent cost of power because you've got to average the 5 and the 3.
So will the tier 2, will that be spread over all the users, or will that be, I mean, how do you determine if you're using?
That's policy to be set by the board yet.
Holly kind of mentioned earlier that we have a lot more questions than answers, and this is very early in the process, and it's not like we haven't thought of some of this stuff, and we will address it, but we do need, we started this process early so we can get our data to our consultant who we hired, less than 2 months ago, right? Right. And so we're very early in this process, and so I just point out that we want you to just a letter of interest, and so we're pushing a lot of things forward as we speak, and your interest in this program is one of those. And so we need to get our consultant working on what that load data looks like, amongst other things, our board policy on rules, like questions like you had.
Will?
Can you compare tier 2 costs to tariff costs? And genuinely, can you make a comparison, or is this one of those, well, it depends on what you use and how much you use it?
Well, tier 2 is market-based power. So when Becky asked the question about spot market purchasing, basically tier 2 is spot market purchasing, right?
Right, yes. But I'm asking about actual, do you have any, is it possible to come up with some sort of generalized statement about
No.
it is often in this range or it is not? Or...
Well, the answer is, well, it depends.
It varies why?
If it's a dry year and there's a shortage of power, tier 2 is going to be high. Okay. If it's a year like this, tier 2 is pretty low.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Mike?
Holly, I talked to the board of directors on that question I had with you on the water. We're trading water basically to buy electric blocks at 20 to 25%. Am I correct?
No.
That's what you told me too today.
Well, Earl Danowski's answer to that question was a much better answer, and I said that at that meeting. The amount of water of the KBRA allocation varies from year to year depending upon year type, and many years the KBRA allocation meets demand. For those years that it does not meet demand, that's the reason for the Affordable Power Program and the on-project plan is to align demand and water supply, or I should say water supply, demand with water supply. Greg, would you like to take a shot at that?
Well, I just think that if I understand the question right, I think from our perspective, water users, we worked on this. It was if you look backwards historically at the numbers, in 50% of the years, there's enough water to meet 100% of the demand, enough surface water. There's no groundwater, nothing else. In the other 50% of the years, there would be some amount of shortage. And that shortage would be made up by voluntary participation in some kind of a program through QuadFund. Groundwater, idling, additional storage, whatever we come up with. And so if Holly says, you're giving up water, I would say you're giving up, in 50% of the years, on average, maybe 25% of the water that was claimed historically in the adjudication, for example. I would not say you're giving up 25% of the water you've had since 2001. So, that's my answer.
Well, now my question starts here. Okay, I was just confirming, what you said to your life and what Greg just said. Now, the water's written into our needs on our property, our water rights. And I was asked to ask you guys are selling this water downstream to buy electricity for this program, right?
No. And
that's what I understood originally.
Your water rights are not on your deed. If your deed says you have a water right, it's an invalid water right. The water rights are administered by the Oregon Water Resources Department. The only valid water right is listed with the Water Resources Department. The project project does not have an adjudicated water right at this time, so there's nothing to appear on your deed until the... What's that?
Ours are written into our deeds.
Well, it's not a
Now,
valid water
the
right.
question was, if we give up this 20-25% of our water rights downstream for cheap power, and we opt out, are you going to continue taking our 20-25% water?
The participation, your participation in the KBRA is voluntary. The concept is that through the on-project plan that we are developing, that there will be incentives for enough participation that those who do not choose to participate don't have to. That's the concept of this. It's my feeling, my goal is that the on-project plan will establish levels of participation and levels of use of water where what we're looking for is where we're losing water, where we can do things more efficiently. And it's my feeling that we're going to find water, that's the goal of it, is to find water that we didn't know we were losing, and that through changing standard practices by those who want to participate, that those years that are now water short, that because there's a new, I'll say, a new use pattern of the water, that we won't have as many water short years and we won't need to pump groundwater as often. And on the backside of that, there'll be even less. The last thing we want is to have people not irrigate. That's not good for the community. A dry acre of land does not produce anything for the rest of the community. And it would be the goal of the on-project plan to limit land idling to only the very worst of the worst years. So the summary of what I'm saying is, I think the on-project plan is going to develop a new behavior for the project where our KBRA allocation meets irrigation demand in most years. In a very few years, we will be using groundwater, and only on the extreme drought years will we have any dry land resulting from that.
To relate that to power, we had a meeting today with Stuart Robertson here, our consultant, and it's just some of the things that we can do in the future to lower your power bills, like on-peak, off-peak type issues. You know, the power rate was, we got pretty sloppy, I think. I used to have a pumping plant that was 2 oddball pumps that didn't really matter because it was just so cheap to pump. That wasn't the cost. You know, there will be efficiencies. You'll look at the efficiencies of your system going forward. We'll have possibly different incentives for people to pump in different times and to lower your power rate. And that's something that we could control amongst ourselves and give incentives to lower those rates by incentivizing you to use your power and water at optimum times. So, you know, it's just really the sky's the limit on where we can go with this.
Another question that was brought to my board of directors on the farm was that they wanted me to ask you, are these sign-ups necessary for you guys to obtain more funds to continue working on this?
No.
Mayor Holland, and I know that you don't want to focus on the KBRA here, but I'm going to take the bait also a little bit. I just want to say that, you know, ultimately the adjudication is going to determine water rights, right? It's going to determine a priority date and an amount, a duty, rate and duty. So if if someone in the room says, you know, I mean, this is a separate deal in the sense that there's a lot of good questions about how much is the power ultimately going to cost at my pump, right? And so you fill out this so that we can get those answers. And you're not committed to anything like that. As far as the water goes, I mean, if you say, I don't like the KBRA, I don't want to have anything to do with it, you can still sign up for this program. Well, I'll say there's more criteria, but in the project you certainly can. And ultimately you can say, I'm not participating in the water programs, and I want my, so the adjudication comes out and says you get 3 acre-feet per acre, then that's what you got to get delivered, 3 acre-feet per acre. We're not taking your water and putting it down the river. We're going to have a market-driven approach to align the demand with the supply.
The only correction I'd make to Greg's comment is Oregon water rates are based upon beneficial use. And so the adjudication will allow a rate and a duty for your land. And the maximum will be 3 acre-feet, but it's your duty to use, to divert only as much as you can put to beneficial use. And the other thing you alluded to was that we're trading money for water going downstream. No, they already have, the ESA has already taken the water downstream. So without KBRA, what we've had for the last 10 years is going to continue.
Okay, right here, there's a good question right here. You said the ESA has already taken water downstream. I've gone through the KBRA, and it's a huge, big, thick deal. Where at? I would like one of you to show me where the KBRA controls the ESA to where we don't end up like 2001 again. We're partnering with the same people that turned us over to the ESA into the KBRA. They're going to be our partners now.
Then you should not sign up for this program. There.
There's an easy answer to that one.
We could do that in the KBRA meeting. There's been several of those. But, I mean, we can't. I'll talk to you after if you want to. We can get into that.
Yeah, we've done enough debating KBRA. Becky?
Nope, I'm going to keep my mouth shut.
This gentleman was ahead.
Well, that's kind of about KBRA. Wait, you just said that 50% of the time we don't have enough water for everybody. That's under the KBRA though, right?
I would argue.
The guidelines to what all the KBRA completely is now.
If you look backwards over history and you look at the diversion limits, yeah, there's shortages of some amount. In some years it's 1,000 acre-feet or less. In many years.
But historically we've always got it, but now through the KBRA.
Well, historically we haven't always got it.
Well, I mean, for the most part we have though, but not 50% of the time. More than 50% of the time we have.
I would say since 2001 with the delays in when you can start, the near misses during the middle of the season, and the 2001s and 2010s, 2008 and 2009 were delayed.
Well, we'll say from 2000, I'm not trying to...
I hear you.
2000 on, or before, we basically got all our water.
Yeah.
But through the guidelines of the KBRA, if you look at historically, then what you're saying is that we'll get our water half the time from now on.
Well,
we're not, I mean, that's not right. That's not a proper way to say it.
I'm going to say we're going to have to make adjustments half the time in order that you either, as an irrigator, you either choose to irrigate or you choose not to irrigate and get some form of compensation. You're either pumping a well or idling land, or CWAPA figures out some, you know, I mean, there's no limit to what we can try to figure out to align the demand. So I'm saying half the years we're going to have to get creative. But I would say that's better than the 2001 or 2010 scenario.
With KBRA, you have some tools to get creative. Without KBRA, your tools are pretty limited.
I started farming in 1980, and granted it was B ground, but I can say that my water was restricted 10% of the time, 3 out of 30 years. So, and you didn't know until the day it was shut off that that was what was going to happen.
Dave?
I kind of mentioned at the last meeting, I really feel like we should be using the block of historical power for the whole basin. And I feel that there's got, you know, that way that everybody's involved if there is a better rate that comes along or a more stable rate. But that's not the direction you guys are taking. So if I don't want to be involved at all, I am subject to what I've had, well, I don't have a contract now, but whatever Pacific Corps is offering me in the future, is that that'll be a different schedule? I mean, how are you going to split that up for people that are involved in this and the people that aren't involved in the basin?
If you do not choose to be involved with the KBPA Affordable Power Program, you continue with Pacific Corps as a Pacific Corps customer under Schedule 41. And whatever that rate is, you'll be paying that rate.
Is that rate going to be good in the future?
There's a lady up front. Go ahead.
Well, I was just wondering how you're going to get a hold of people that haven't come to the meetings and haven't gotten the application. I know they've probably all been invited, but...
Well, you don't have to come to a meeting to sign up, but please talk to your neighbors. We want the word out there. We want people having a choice. And Becky?
Well, I think that was just, especially for the off project, we were very, very concerned about people, all the people getting the word. And so we did do a mailing based on, you know, the tributaries and, you know, the wood, the Sprague, some Lower Williamson, try to capture as many of the people as we could through that. But it's hard because we don't have a mechanism to know who everybody is.
What we have done is send out postcards from the irrigation districts. We've done radio blitzes on 4 different stations. We've done the nickel. We've done 3 Sundays in the paper, public notices, and at least 2 Thursdays in the agriculture section, so in display ads. So please, if you know someone who lives out of town and they own property and pumps, call them, let them know, whatever.
Can you also look at tax records and, you know, maybe, I know we got our postcard last week, and, you know, this was the only meeting that we could come to because of the lateness in getting the
We're hoping people
postcard.
call, you know, pick up the phone. You know, we have been getting calls. So.
We have to
We have
depend
no
upon
master list.
word of mouth to some extent.
DP&L won't give us that without, it's private information, your information is private information. Unless you give us a release, we can't even get to, and they know by schedule if you qualify, but there's a disconnect. So.
They won't give you a database that says all the...
It would
It's a
have,
privacy law. And
it would have been really convenient if Toby would have just said, here's the address list of Schedule 33. But he's mean, he wouldn't do that.
But
Go ahead.
some of the people who own those addresses might not have been happy.
Yes, exactly.
That's right. There's laws in it.
Right.
In all fairness.
There's confidentiality, and they respect your right to be confidential.
Hey, Holly, the one other thing I wanted to just add as a follow-up to this gentleman's question, I should have mentioned is, just remember when you think of the context since, say, 2000, 2001, however you want to look at it, the rules we're living under today, we were, as part of a biological opinion, we had a water bank operated by the federal government. So in 2003, 4, 5, and 6, I think those are the right years, we pumped groundwater regardless of what the weather was like. You know.
Yeah, I wasn't.
And so I'm just saying those years.
I wasn't trying to be.
No, I get it.
I just wanted to understand. So the water. So you're saying that because the water, we had water bank even when there wasn't
a need.
Like, well, full deliveries, I guess. Hard to recall, but we still had water banks or water bank offered like since 2001, 5, 6 times, I guess. So that's what you're saying.
That's what I'm getting to.
I just had a question about on the form here, evaluating your system load requirements, and somebody mentioned historical data, but there's a lot of land that was in the land idling programs over the years, so those figures are going to be way down. So when you make your projection on here, if you had a parcel that was in it, you'd project like you were going to use that, right?
Yes.
If you start looking at historical data, the projection on here and what the actual use was could be quite a bit different.
That's correct. That's correct.
So-
And if we see that you had a load on one year and a load off one year, but it wasn't a shortage year, or wasn't that short, you know, we will probably get back to you and say, you know, was this part of an idling program, part of a water banking program, so that when we go to set our high water mark with BPA, we can tell that, look, that there were some unique things going on here that weren't going on in the past. So there's going to have to be some manipulation of the data to try and accurately reflect how you operate.
Good. That's going to be a big job for somebody to try and figure out.
That's why I said Stuart's going to do some magic here.
Yeah.
Something I forgot to mention on the Pacific Power form, there's little tiny hash marks on the side. They want those initialed instead of checked. We're getting forms with checks on them, and they need to be initialed. So by initial, you're authorizing the historical billing or whatever's there.
Did you ever get an answer on, like, we're on schedule 41 already on our rates, and I asked you at the one meeting you were going to check on it. We get almost about a 9.8% discount from BPA through Pacificorp. Are we going to be able to retain that same discount? It's called the Columbian Basin.
We don't know the answer to that yet. We've talked about it, but we don't know what the answer is yet. Yes,
I've
sir.
got one more question, I'll shut up. Well, I have two pumps that are tied together, so I could run, well, to run everything, I gotta run both pumps, but like if I have hay down, I might still be watering some ground, and I can use either pump. So, I guess do you want to just average kind of overall what the whole thing would be on this? Because it may not reflect that on my bill, because my pumps are different bills, you know what I mean?
The two pumps are under 1 meter, correct?
No, they're on different meters, but they're tied together with main line. So I could run either pump wherever I want. But to run all my wheel lines, I have to run both pumps.
Well, I think the idea for each meter, each line on there, you'd want to try and do the best you can to estimate. For instance, as I understand, you have one of the meters will serve almost two sets of operations. Is that correct?
Well, the pumps are tied together, so like if I wanted to water way down there with the pump closer wherever, then I can use it, or I can use the pump that's closer to it. It doesn't really matter. So I have one pump that it's just a lot more convenient to run it. So this year I've actually ran it a lot more than I do my other pump. So the demand on it's been a lot higher this year.
That's one reason why we have the acreage on there, so that we can line those two up. I think you just have to give us your best estimate as to what you think the operation would be.
So just kind of try to average them out, maybe.
Average them out, or pick a typical operation. If you were to go through a year and just say, yeah, this is how I think it would work, and do the best you can, because that's all we have. Unfortunately, Pacificorp doesn't report hourly usage, so we're having to make a little bit of a stab in the dark about the hourly usage under a monthly total.
Carl?
I guess, Toby, do you know the answer to his question about that Columbia Basin benefit or BPA benefit that's a reduction discounted?
I don't.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sure we could all hypothesize,
Sure.
but I don't know.
Okay, thank you. Because
I don't know that there is an answer yet, because you're looking at breaking some new ground.
That is a good question. I mean, there's been a lot of activity on that credit. It was there, it's gone, it's back. Yeah, it's a good question.
Yes, sir.
If, in some one particular year or something, that the entire block of power that you have contracted for is not used, and there is a surplus left over, what happens to that? Do we still have to pay for that block of power from BPA, or is that turned back to BPA, or can you put it on the market and sell it to somebody else? What happens to it if that should happen?
You can't resell the federal power. You only get what you can consume. What's not consumed or what you don't use is used by somebody else.
So, okay.
That kind of relates to a question I had. So if we talk about manipulation of the figures, would it be advantageous to go ahead and overestimate whenever
No, you want to be accurate, because in the end, there's only so many kilowatt hours that we're going to use. Pacific Corp will give us the records when you release them, and what we're going to do is we're just going to try and pattern that usage out. Typically, we will get a block of energy for each month for each meter, and what we're going to try and do is make a best estimate of how that energy is used within the month. So just be as accurate as you can, and don't try and push things one direction or another, because then we'll end up with false results and we'll have to explain something later.
And we're hoping that we get a buffer zone above.
Well, that's what I was thinking.
Right,
when you
right.
Talk about tier 1 and tier 2.
We're going to get as much as we can.
Yep. Before we hit tier 2.
So this is where the discussion of whether you had a land idling program or not. If we know that they probably everybody else was using power around them, and that load wasn't operating, there'll be a phone call or a supposition made that this is because of the land idling program, and we will, in essence, take 1 year's load and move it into another year as being representative.
Yes, Kathy?
Oh, well, to add to his question, I mean, what you told me about I can use more power later on if I need more power, if I need to add a field or something. So if you have an idle field, say this year, I mean, if I'm in the program, I can add the power usage to another field next, an additional field. I can increase my power load.
Yes.
In the program, as long as it fits within the block, or?
No, you are not regulated on how much power you can use. You can use as much as you need to use. It's just that the COAPA and the Alliance here will get a different charge from BPA if we go above that, and that will likely happen over time, unless there's an awful lot of efficiency that's found. We will likely go above that, and so there'll be a portion of your power that will be at tier one, portion at tier 2, and they will have to come up with a way to spread that around to everybody or allocate it to those loads that bring it on. That's a policy decision for down the road.
I think one thing's safe to say, we're going to encourage farming the ground. We're not going to encourage idling if we have anything to say other than power rate.
Any more questions? Mike, one last question.
Will you guys have all of these answers that haven't been able to answer ready for us by the what is it, the November date, cutoff date?
Yeah, we're going to work at getting, we've got the list of questions, and whatever we add to the list that hasn't already been asked, and we'll do our best to get, there may be some questions like this Columbia Basin thing, we don't know where to get the answer. So, but we'll do our best to answer the questions, and they'll be on the website. Pat?
Well, I was just going to kind of make a comment. Our power bills are going to double within the next 2 years. This is going to be a major input to our operations. So it's going to be something new that we're going to have to manage that we probably haven't had to manage that much in the past. So, so everybody's going to have to look at their power bill a lot different than we did. So that's one of the things we hope that we can do through KBPA is we'll be able to be a tool or a resource to help you understand how to, one of the options we're going to have is peak and off-peak power times where you might be able to pump pump water at night and be off peak and get a cheaper power rate. Just how you start your pumps. If you start your pump at the end of the month, it's going to be more of a charge than if you pump it out evenly through the month, and how you start and stop. So that's hopefully by being kind of managed by the KBPA, being managed for the benefit of everybody, and the boards being ranchers and stuff. We're going to be out there trying to help everybody get the most efficient that we can. And ideally, your power consumption is going to go down just because it's a matter of economics. You're going to have to really manage that power, and hopefully KBPA will also help you in managing that power. What's the best program? What's the most efficient? Peak power, off peak, all those kind of things. So when's the best time to start a pump, not start a pump, and how to power up, whether variable pumps are better than other things. So there's a lot of stuff in the future that's going to be coming. We're going to have to do a lot of work. There's a lot of work involved.
Carl?
I was talking to Steve Kander the other day, and his California farm, which is at full tariff now, I just remember budgeting like $4, $5 an acre for power back when we were under contract. He said his power this year was $70 an acre, and he skipped one irrigation and opted to flood irrigate a field. So, that's what we're looking at, and that's what we're going to try to do the best we can to get people where they can continue to farm their farms. And thank God commodity prices are where they're at, because if they fell back down, it'd be tough, and we know that.
I have a quick question. When do you think you're going to know all the data? I mean, is it going to be ready for next year's farming? Is it going to be ready for 2 years from now? When will you have all the data and going to put this into the process for us to use?
Well, one depends on when PacifiCorp can get all the data back to us and how they feed us the data. We're hoping to get everything electronically.
Okay.
Under the best of all circumstances, because this is mainly a paper organization, it could happen as early as next year, but it probably won't. I mean, it's just the way things work. It'll probably be out in 2013 before we can.
So don't give our hopes up saying that we're going to have low power next year.
But you won't be full tariff next year either.
No, but we just want to make sure that we're not putting into our budget as farming, into our budget, as you plan on for the next year and stuff, that we're going to have this low rate and not end up not having it.
We're dealing with two federal entities and a publicly operated utility, and because we need to, we're looking at trying to get the transmission rate melded in with the BPA rate. PacifiCorp is going to get the same amount of dollars. It's just we're going to get it there in different ways. There's a lot of negotiations that have to go on, and I wish I could guarantee that, I would really love to have this on by July of next year. It's doable if everybody said yes.
Yeah.
It's not that hard to do. It's just a matter of.
So we're just still in the steady stages of it and trying to do research and all that stuff still.
Yes. The big thing is the discussions between PacifiCorp, BPA. They each have complex rules that they work under, and they get in trouble from other ratepayers if they don't completely vet out each question and have the answer right. So
this is more of a future, not near future, but future.
well,
in a sense.
As Stuart says, depending on how those negotiations go, probably not for 2012.
Maybe 13.
Maybe 13.
Maybe
14 is probably pretty good.
Far future.
Yeah.
Okay.
You keep saying negotiations, but I asked if you're not really negotiating in a sense for a power rate, because you said you're not negotiating. The power rates are set. So I'm a little confused.
Well, there's a lot more to it than negotiating the power rate. There's negotiating how the power moves.
But is that going to make effect on the price? How the power moves?
I don't know. That's, until we, go ahead, Stuart.
For instance, Bonneville has its own transmission tariff, so does Pacific Corp. If we just take the tariffs as they are without any negotiation, you get a pancake transmission tariff from Bonneville and Pacific Corp. If we can get the two to come together, Bonneville will absorb the cost of the Pacific Corp transmission into their total transmission rate. Let's just say the transmission rate's a penny a kilowatt hour. Instead of a penny a kilowatt hour, because they're absorbing this extra cost, it'll be 1.000001 cents per kilowatt hour. So everybody in the Bonneville system would have to pay a little bit more because they have one rate for their transmission. Pacific Corp will get all the same dollars, but it'll come to a lower rate, but we won't pay a pancake tariff. We won't have to pay a penny here and a penny there. It'll be 1.0001 pennies. And that's just an example. It's not a...
So the tariff rates are different for Pacific Corp and BPA?
Well, you can't
Each
call
one
it
has its
tariff
own.
rate.
Each one has its own rate that they develop to recover costs.
So maybe this is a clear way to state it. We're negotiating what services BPA provides and what services Pacific Corp provides.
That's a good way to put it.
And there's some overlap in those services, and it's our job to sort out where that overlap is and be sure there's no overlap. So what services we get from BPA, we want to be sure that we're not being charged for a duplicate service from Pacific Corp. Kathy?
Well, I hear you're looking at, you want the power rates to go down, or not go up so much, right? Yeah, all of us. Isn't there some investing scheduled if we receive the funding through the power program? Aren't you looking at generating power here in the basin somehow, something, and thereby putting that power, selling that power that you guys generate? So that would benefit your ag users in the basin?
Yes. The KVRA provides funding for renewable generation. It would be nice if we identify renewable generation here in the basin, but the main focus is going to be profit. We want the most profit we can get, because that's what matters to you folks, is how low is your power rate going to get. So part of the KVRA is money to hire a consultant to guide us on what to do for renewable generation. So yes, when we develop a renewable project that's a money-making enterprise, the profit from that will buy down the power rates. And how that will be applied is still up to the board of directors to make a decision on.
And just the ulterior motive to low-cost power from a big picture perspective is if the power costs less, you can, as a district or as a project, you're able to reuse that water more times, right? I mean, that's an efficiency thing too. You're able to do more with it if you can pump it more. So that's a side component to that.
I want to know if this all comes on board, who's going to send me the bill?
It'll be KVPA will send you the bill.
Don't want to get billed twice.
Okay, yes,
I'm not
sir.
sure if this is the proper forum for this question, but it's something I wondered about. On one ranch that we have, it's, when we start irrigating in the spring, we pretty much go all summer. Those pumps don't get shut off. It's pretty much a steady thing. What I'm wondering about is how the demand charge works. If everything's running pretty steady, there's a couple hundred horse pumps out there, everything's piped in together, every once in a while you shut one of those off. They fix something, or change a valve, or do whatever. They'll turn another one back on. Does every time you turn one of those on and one off, is that making your demand charge skyrocket again? How does that demand thing work?
I don't know how to answer your question. My understanding is the demand charge is a one-time charge at the end of, in the fall and November. And
So it's just a per season thing, it's not, because I've been
Yeah.
told every time you turn a pump on.
So every month there's a charge, and there's a bigger demand charge at the end of the season, like in November, I believe. So when you create a demand each month, there's a bill. If you
So it's
create
monthly.
several demands within the month, it's whatever that maximum demand is that's recorded. It's not, you don't get charged for a demand charge every time you turn it on. For that, you pay the energy. But the maximum demand that you record in that month is the basis for your delivery charge.
That's basically a monthly
Yeah,
figure.
yes.
There's a question here about historical billing data, usage, kilowatt hours, and demand for calendar years 2008, 2009, and 2010. Do they want to know how many kilowatts you use each year?
And by signing that form, you don't have to provide the information. Pacific Core will release it to
I guess
us.
they already know.
Yeah, they already know.
Yeah, you need to have 3 years of data.
Still think I have 3 years.
Kathy?
So you said that there was hire a consultant to guide us on
The renewable energy. Yeah.
and that hasn't been decided.
No, the money, because KBRA has not been authorized, we don't have the funds to do that yet. So, unless there's a important question, it's getting late. Most of you probably haven't had dinner, so thanks for coming.
Got kids to put it to sleep.